Today, we bring you a suspense film. The plot is very compact. There are many plot twists. Before the last minute, I can't imagine who the murderer is. Then I'll follow the film in the usual way of narration, then explain it to you. I'll try not to spoiler the plot. Let's remain the thrill of the movie. Now, let's start. At the beginning of the movie, a man rushed out and ran to a house. There was a murder there. His name was Jun Sung, an old classmate of the victim. But he didn't feel sorry for his friend but shouting the victim's husband's name. He was the main character of the movie. He slumped down the corridor. Young Hoon and Jun Sung were also classmates. The victim in the room was Young Hoon's wife. The picture turned. 6 months after the incident, Young Hoon woke up in the underground parking lot. He seemed to be waiting for Sang Min to appear. He must be a suspect in the eyes of Young Hoon. Just locking the car, Young Hoon appeared behind him. After a fight between the two, he was brought home by Young Hoon and tied up. On the other side, Da-yoon appeared. She was Jun Sung's wife. There seemed to be something important. She was looking for Young Hoon. The camera turned and came to a month ago. The police informed Young Hoon to go to the police station to claim his wife's relics. Young Hoon found the photos taken by the police at the scene. He took it home with him. Da-yoon came to the door at this time, pleading with Young Hoon to testify in court. Because during the investigation, Jun Sung's hair was found at the scene. They were all old classmates. He was always a usual guest of them. Young Hoon didn't think much of it, promising to testify in court. But now Young Hoon didn't think so. Because of an investigation, he now thought Jun Sung was also a suspect. Da-yoon fell on the spot. Because of not testifying, Jun Sung was charged with murder, causing his daughter, who was in kindergarten, to be despised. The two suffered from being mistreated. This scene was seen by Young Hoon. More or less, he felt bad for them. Would he find the real murderer or choose to maintain silence? That night, a strange man was sneaking around the door. It was the man at the beginning of the film, Sang Min, who was tied up by Young Hoon. This might also be the reason why Young Hoon suspected him. Young Hoon accidentally cut his hand in the argument. He was going to wipe it on the towel on the hanger. But he felt something was wrong. He quickly took out the photos taken by the police at the scene. He seemed to have found something by comparison. The picture went back to the day of his wife's funeral. Jun Sung was taken away by the police. At that time, Young Hoon was also at the scene, going out and explaining Jun Sung didn't do it. But he was also taken away. At the police station, the officer said to Young Hoon that they found his hair at the crime scene. Young Hoon quickly explained, "We are good friends. He always comes, so it's normal that his hair was found at my home." Then the officer said that the position of the hair was very special. They found it in the corner of his wife's mouth. And through forensic identification, it fell after his wife died. It proved that Jun Sung was likely to be present at that time. Now even Da-yoon would be investigated. She was also flustered. That was why Young Hoon didn't appear in court. He also thought Jun Sung was the culprit. Something was wrong. Then the police officer asked Da-yoon alone, telling her that in fact, her husband had an affair with another woman. His mistress was Young Hoon's wife. Da-yoon didn't believe it. They were classmates for so many years. Young Hoon and his wife were introduced to each other by Jun Sung. How could this happen? When the officer took out the chat record, she was shocked. Afterward, Da-yoon went to question her husband. On the night of the incident, he and Da-yoon had a heated quarrel. The reason was that Jun Sung was too close to Young Hoon's wife. But at that time, Jun Sung firmly denied it and left his wife and daughter behind. Now being a suspect, he admitted having an affair and begged his wife to save him. Da-yoon asked him, "Does anyone else know about it?" Jun Sung replied, "So far, only you know." But a strange thing happened that night. A strange man broke in, but neither he nor Young Hoon's wife knew that man. Then Jun Sung asked Da-yoon to hide it. He and Young Hoon's wife was nothing. So he had no motive to kill her. He couldn't be convicted. This man was really a thorough scum man. The picture returned to the present. Da-yoon found Young Hoon again, wanting Young Hoon to testify in court. But she heard someone shouting inside. Young Hoon flustered and pulled her in. When she came in, she was stunned. Strangely enough, Da-yoon's first reaction was to ask Young Hoon, "What did Sang Min say to you?" Young Hoon said nothing. She gradually calmed down. She untied the rope to release Sang Min, afraid of creating a crime. But she was stopped. The picture went back to a week ago. Young Hoon restored the crime scene. After several simulations, he found a lot of missing points. First of all, there must have been a guest at home on the day of the crime. But it shouldn't be Jun Sung. If it was him, his wife would certainly put away things like underwear. She was afraid Jun Sung would be embarrassed to see it. And from the scene photos, she just covered her underwear with a cloth. It seemed that this person was not very important. Then he handed Da-yoon a picture. It was his daughter's handkerchief. It was his daughter's favorite thing. Jun Sung, who always regarded his daughter as his life, would never cover a corpse's face with it. And he couldn't be stupid to leave such important evidence at the scene. So for the time being, he ruled Jun Sung out of the suspect list. Sang Min, who was tied at home now, was the biggest suspect. But how could Da-yoon let the old classmate commit a crime in front of her? She told Young Hoon to calm down. What if it isn't him? Aren't you going to be in more trouble? At this time, Young Hoon was very upset. If the culprit wasn't him, it could only be Jun Sung. He couldn't choose one. Then he went out and thought about life. At this time, Sang-min seemed to have something to say, telling Do-yoon to untie the tape on his mouth. Do-yoon did it without thinking. Sang-min said, "You help me untie the rope, I'll tell you the truth. In fact, the real murderer is Young Hoon. I saw him the day of the crime." At this time, Do-yoon suddenly realized it. She slowly recalled what she had caught him doing. First, she was at Young Hoon's house, finding a picture of 2 cups of coffee. She hid it away. Besides, she found the phone that the police didn't find out. It was in the hands of Young Hoon. At this time, Young Hoon appeared behind her, almost scaring her to death. Then Young Hoon said, "It's full of indecent photos of my wife. I didn't want anyone to see it, so I took it." But he found an unsolicited message. The content was "now at home," and then a half-written reply. The reply formed some words. Young Hoon said maybe she pressed the wrong button, telling Do-yoon not to tell the police. Then the crime was simulated. Do-yoon cooperated with him. Do-yoon was almost strangled to death. He scared her into running away. The situation became out of hand. She could only untie the rope quickly, releasing Sang-min. But Young Hoon found out. She closed the door immediately and called the police. Young Hoon was crazy, smashing the door open with a hammer. But here came the reversal. Sang-min immediately changed his words, saying, "Young Hoon, I saw Jun Sung on the day of the crime." At this time, Do-yoon was a little out of control, telling Young Hoon not to believe Sang-min. "He's provoking us. Did you lie?" Young Hoon looked down at him. Sang-min said he had found out long ago that his wife had an unusual relationship with Jun Sung. Do-yoon also knew this, but she was hiding away the truth. When Do-yoon went to question her husband that day, Jun Sung admitted that he had an affair, not with Young Hoon's wife, but with Sang-min's wife. That's why Do-yoon hid the reason why he appeared at Young Hoon's house that day. Because when the affair was exposed, as an old classmate, he wanted Young Hoon's wife to help him find a way. On the day of the crime, Sang-min's wife ran out in the middle of the night. Sang-min thought she went on a date with Jun Sung again, so he just drove to Jun Sung's house, ready to catch the cheaters. He saw Jun Sung went upstairs. At that time, he had lost his wisdom, crazily smashing on the door. As soon as the door opened, in front of him were Young Hoon's wife and Jun Sung. He thought he misunderstood his wife. But one day, she had a scar on her face. The day Young Hoon saw Do-yoon was bullied, it wasn't because of being despised, but because of her husband had an affair with that woman, so Do-yoon was angry, coming forward and slapping her. That night, Sang-min's wife confessed everything. Sang-min cursed Jun Sung and threatened to kill him. That was why he was able to investigate Young Hoon's case. Finally, he found out, the day he went to Young Hoon's house, also the day of the crime, it showed that Jun Sung was the real murderer. Now Young Hoon had been deceived. He always believed in his old classmate, defending the murder like a fool. No wonder when Do-yoon first saw Sang-min, her reaction was not to save him but to ask Young Hoon what he said. The reason why Young Hoon chose to alarm her not to save Sang-min nor to save Young Hoon was to take advantage of the reversal. Do-yoon could blame him. Why did she come to Young Hoon again and again? Because she wanted him to testify in court so her husband could get rid of his crime. According to the principle of the first instance, the counter case would not be pursued. Then she could blame all the responsibilities on Young Hoon. At this time, Young Hoon suddenly realized that the world was simple. What was complicated was humans. The doorbell suddenly rang. Here came the police. Just opening the door, everything would come to light. Do-yoon tried to stop him, kneeling and begging Young Hoon not to open the door. He looked at him, saying nothing at all, dragging a heavy step, ready to uncover the ugly truth. His mind filtered over and over again the scene at the time of the crime that was simulated before. But he couldn't figure it out. The last text his wife wanted to send. In the end, what was it? At this time, the mobile phone on the ground rang. The nickname, Sister, appeared on it. Now Young Hoon was completely awake. The last word to be typed was actually, Sister. He connected all the expressions of Do-yoon before, a fierce flashback. The real murderer was revealed. What happened that night? Do-yoon just had a quarrel with her husband. After seeing her husband come out of Young Hoon's house, she had already lost her mind. When she entered the house, she slaughtered Young Hoon's wife. In the end, she dragged Young Hoon's wife to the ground and strangled her to death. How Jun Sung's hair fell at the scene was also explained. In other words, Do-yoon mistook that Jun Sung had an affair with Young Hoon's wife, causing an irreparable situation today. Looking at everything in front of him, Young Hoon stood in his place. It was his persistence that made this woman crazy. She just wanted to have a happy family, creating a good growth environment for her daughter, being a good wife, being a mother. Was it that hard? Young Hoon thought he failed, too. Then the police rushed in, pressing Young Hoon on the ground. He remained silent during the investigation. He took responsibility of his wife's death, being taken away. Jun Sung was released, living happy life again. But in the end, he found in the car his daughter's handkerchief. There was blood on it. Do-yoon sat silently in the ward. This was the end of the film. Do you understand? It is safe to say that this movie is no less than any suspense film, having so many plot twists. Even if you know the end, it doesn't have much impact on the process of watching it. The thrill is still strong. If you like this movie, you can watch it. That's all for today. I'll see you next time.